Behind the solemn black veils and carefully rehearsed protocols of Queen Elizabeth II's funeral lay a brewing storm that would forever change the dynamics within the British royal family. What appeared to be a perfectly orchestrated farewell to Britain's longest-reigning monarch concealed a moment of childhood defiance that would spark tensions reaching the very heart of the monarchy. In the front rows of Westminster Abbey, where the world's most powerful leaders sat in respectful silence, a 7-year-old princess made a choice that would echo through the corridors of Buckingham Palace for months to come. Princess Charlotte, the spirited daughter of Prince William and Catherine, unknowingly triggered a chain of events that would expose deep-seated rivalries, unspoken resentments, and the delicate balance of power within the House of Windsor. This is not just another story about royal protocol or childhood innocence. This is the true account of how one small act of rebellion during Britain's most watched moment in decades would create ripples that threatened to undermine the very foundation of royal unity that King Charles III desperately needed to establish his reign. What you are about to discover has been whispered in palace corridors, discussed in private royal circles, and carefully hidden from public view. Until now, the morning of September 8th, 2022, began like any other at Windsor Castle, but by evening, the world had changed forever. Queen Elizabeth II, at the age of 96, had passed away peacefully at Balmoral Castle in Scotland, surrounded by her closest family members. The news sent shockwaves across the globe, but nowhere was the impact felt more deeply than within the walls of the royal residences where her great-grandchildren lived their daily lives. Princess Charlotte Elizabeth Diana, 7 years old and full of the same spirited energy that had defined her great-grandmother in her youth, was at home with her parents when the news arrived. Prince William, who had rushed to Scotland earlier that day, called Catherine to break the news gently to their children. Charlotte, George, and little Louis would need to understand that their beloved Gone, as they affectionately called the Queen, was no longer with them. Catherine knelt down to Charlotte's level in the drawing room of their Kensington Palace apartment, her voice gentle but firm. The little princess, known for her quick wit and perceptive nature, seemed to grasp the gravity of the situation immediately. Unlike her older brother George, who struggled with the concept of death, or Louis, who was too young to fully comprehend, Charlotte asked pointed questions about what would happen next. Her curiosity about royal protocol and traditions had always impressed the adults around her, but now it would become crucial knowledge. The days that followed were a whirlwind of preparation, protocol meetings, and endless discussions about what role the children would play in the upcoming funeral. Palace advisors debated extensively about whether the Wales children should attend at all. The funeral would be one of the largest gathering of world leaders in recent history, with over 2,000 guests expected at Westminster Abbey. The security concerns alone were staggering, but there was also the question of whether such young children could handle the emotional weight and formal requirements of such a significant state occasion. King Charles III, still adjusting to his new role and the overwhelming responsibilities that came with it, was adamant that his grandchildren should be present. He believed that their attendance would demonstrate the continuity of the monarchy and the important role the younger generation would play in its future. However, this decision created immediate tension with other members of the family, particularly Queen Camilla, who had her own ideas about how the funeral should proceed. Camilla had spent years working to establish her position within the royal family, carefully navigating the complex relationships and unspoken rules that governed palace life. The funeral represented her first major public appearance as queen consort, and she was acutely aware that every detail would be scrutinized by the media and the public. Her relationship with William's children had always been cordial, but distant, lacking the natural warmth that had existed between them and their great-grandmother. The protocol meetings became increasingly tense as the funeral date approached. Camilla's private secretary raised concerns about seating arrangements, suggesting that the children should be positioned where they would be less visible to cameras and less likely to cause disruptions. She worried about their ability to maintain the solemn dignity required for such an occasion, particularly given Charlotte's reputation for being outspoken and occasionally unpredictable. These concerns were not entirely unfounded. Charlotte had already made headlines for her spirited behavior at public events, including telling photographers to stop taking pictures at her grandfather's Platinum Jubilee celebrations earlier that year. While the public found these moments charming, they highlighted the challenge of managing young royals during formal occasions. The funeral would require hours of sitting still, complete silence during prayers and readings, and absolute adherence to complex ceremonial protocols. William and Catherine found themselves caught in the middle of these discussions, fiercely protective of their children while also understanding the enormous pressure everyone was under. They spent hours talking with Charlotte, George, and Louis about what to expect, practicing sitting quietly for extended periods, and explaining the importance of showing respect during such a solemn occasion. Charlotte, ever the perfectionist, took these lessons seriously, asking detailed questions about when to stand, when to bow, and what would happen if she needed to use the restroom during the service. The night before the funeral, Charlotte lay in her bed at Kensington Palace, staring at the ceiling and thinking about her great-grandmother. She remembered the private moments they had shared during family gatherings at Sandringham and Balmoral, the way the Queen would slip her extra biscuits during tea time, and how she would listen intently when Charlotte showed her drawings or told her stories about school. The Queen had always treated Charlotte as an individual, never talking down to her or dismissing her thoughts because of her age. As Charlotte drifted off to sleep, she made a private promise to herself that she would honor her great-grandmother's memory by being the best version of herself at the funeral. She wanted to make the Queen proud, to show everyone that she understood the importance of the day, and to demonstrate the strength and grace that her great-grandmother had embodied throughout her 70-year reign. Little did she know that her actions the following day would create a situation that would resonate throughout the royal family for months to come. The morning of September 19th dawned clear and crisp, with autumn beginning to show its colors in the London parks. Inside Kensington Palace, the Wales family prepared for what would be one of the most significant days in their lives. Catherine helped Charlotte into her black dress, a specially tailored outfit that maintained the solemnity of the occasion while allowing for the comfort a 7-year-old would need during the long day ahead. Charlotte's hair was styled simply, pulled back in a way that would remain neat throughout the ceremonies. As they prepared to leave for Westminster Abbey, William gathered his children together for a final conversation about the day ahead. He reminded them about the importance of showing respect, staying close to their parents, and remembering that millions of people around the world would be watching to say goodbye to their great-grandmother. Charlotte nodded solemnly, but there was something in her expression that suggested she was thinking deeply about something beyond the immediate instructions. The journey to Westminster Abbey took place in a carefully orchestrated convoy of vehicles, with police escorts and security measures that transformed central London into a fortress. Charlotte pressed her face to the window of their car, watching the crowds of people lining the streets, many holding flowers and flags, all waiting to witness this historic moment. The sight of so many people gathering to honor her great-grandmother filled her with a sense of pride and responsibility that seemed far beyond her years. Upon arriving at Westminster Abbey, the family was escorted through a series of holding rooms where they would wait until it was time for the service to begin. Charlotte observed everything around her with intense curiosity, noting the way the adults interacted, the careful attention to protocol, and the underlying tension that seemed to permeate every conversation. She was particularly aware of Queen Camilla, who appeared nervous and was engaged in several hushed conversations with her private secretaries about last-minute details. It was during these final moments before the service that Charlotte made an observation that would prove to be the catalyst for everything that followed. She noticed that Queen Camilla was wearing a particular piece of jewelry, a brooch that had belonged to Queen Elizabeth II, and something about this detail struck Charlotte as significant. The little princess had spent enough time with her great-grandmother to recognize many of her personal belongings, and this particular brooch held special meaning that only Charlotte seemed to remember. As the time approached for the procession into the abbey to begin, Charlotte took a deep breath and prepared to honor her great-grandmother in the best way she knew how. She had no idea that her actions over the next few hours would create a diplomatic incident within the royal family, expose long-standing tensions between different factions of the monarchy, and ultimately force King Charles III to make decisions about the future that he had hoped to avoid during his early months as sovereign. The stage was set for a moment that would be remembered not just for its significance in British history, but for the way it would reveal the complex human dynamics that continue to shape one of the world's oldest monarchies. Princess Charlotte, with her 7-year-old perspective and unwavering sense of justice, was about to teach the adult members of her family a lesson about honor, memory, and the true meaning of royal duty. The Diamond Jubilee brooch had a story that stretched back decades, one that few people in the royal family fully understood, but Princess Charlotte remembered with remarkable clarity. During one of her last private visits to Windsor Castle, just 3 months before the Queen's passing, Charlotte had spent an afternoon in her great-grandmother's private study while the adults discussed family matters in another room. The Queen, noticing Charlotte's fascination with a small jewelry box on her desk, had opened it to reveal several pieces that held particular sentimental value. Among them was the Diamond Jubilee brooch, a stunning piece featuring diamonds arranged in the shape of a bow, commissioned to commemorate the Queen's Diamond Jubilee in 2012. But its significance went far beyond its monetary value or even its historical importance. The Queen had explained to Charlotte that this brooch was meant to be passed down through the direct line of succession, specifically to the wives of future kings. It was intended as a symbol of continuity and legitimacy, worn by queens who would carry forward the monarchy's traditions. The Queen had been very specific about this detail, explaining to Charlotte in simple terms that some pieces of jewelry were meant for everyone in the family to enjoy, while others had special rules about who could wear them and when. She had even mentioned that she hoped one day Charlotte might wear this very brooch when she was much older and married to someone important. The 7-year-old had listened intently, filing away this information with the same careful attention she gave to all her great-grandmother's stories. Now, as Charlotte sat in the holding room at Westminster Abbey, she stared at the brooch pinned prominently on Queen Camilla's black dress coat. The little princess felt a wave of confusion and something that she couldn't quite articulate, but that adults might recognize as a sense of betrayal. According to her great-grandmother's explanation, this piece should have been saved for Catherine, who was married to the heir to the throne, or kept in the royal vault until such time as it could be appropriately bestowed. Charlotte's understanding of royal hierarchy was surprisingly sophisticated for her age, largely due to the careful education her parents had provided about her family's role in British society. She knew that her father would one day be king, which meant her mother would be queen. She also understood that Queen Camilla, while married to the current king, held a different position in the family structure. The distinction might seem subtle to outsiders, but to Charlotte, it represented a fundamental question of fairness and proper order. As the family prepared to enter Westminster Abbey, Charlotte wrestled with what she should do about her observation. She considered mentioning it to her mother, but Catherine appeared focused on helping Louis stay calm and ensuring that George understood his role in the procession. William was deep in conversation with palace officials about security arrangements and timing. The adults around her seemed overwhelmed by the magnitude of the day, and Charlotte worried that bringing up concerns about jewelry might seem trivial given the circumstances. However, Charlotte's sense of justice, inherited from both sides of her family, would not allow her to simply ignore what she perceived as a significant breach of protocol. She remembered her great-grandmother's words about the importance of doing the right thing, even when it was difficult or uncomfortable. The Queen had often spoken to her about standing up for what was correct, regardless of whether it made other people happy. The procession into Westminster Abbey began with military precision, each member of the royal family taking their designated position according to strict protocols that had been rehearsed multiple times. Charlotte walked between her parents, her small hand clasped tightly in Catherine's her eyes scanning the magnificent Gothic architecture of the abbey while simultaneously processing the enormity of the occasion. The building was filled with an extraordinary gathering of world leaders, foreign royalty, and British dignitaries, all united in their desire to pay final respects to the late Queen. As they took their seats in the front section of the abbey, Charlotte found herself with a clear view of Queen Camilla, who was seated prominently as the new queen consort. The diamond Jubilee brooch caught the light from the abbey's chandeliers, sparkling in a way that seemed to draw attention to itself. Charlotte tried to focus on the service, listening to the beautiful hymns and following along with the prayers, but her eyes kept returning to the brooch. The Archbishop of Canterbury began the service with words about the Queen's dedication to duty, her unwavering faith, and her commitment to serving others before herself. As these tributes filled the sacred space, Charlotte felt an increasing sense that something needed to be addressed. She thought about all the stories her great-grandmother had told her about making difficult decisions, about the importance of speaking truth even when it was uncomfortable, and about the responsibility that came with being part of the royal family. During one of the hymns, as the congregation stood and voices filled the abbey with "The Lord's my shepherd," Charlotte made her decision. She turned to her mother and tugged gently on Catherine's black coat. When Catherine leaned down, Charlotte whispered something that made her mother's eyes widen slightly. Catherine glanced toward Queen Camilla, then back at Charlotte, her expression showing both surprise and concern. What Charlotte had whispered was simple, but potentially explosive. "Mummy, why is Queen Camilla wearing Gongon's special brooch? The one that was supposed to be for you?" The question was delivered with the innocent directness that only a child could manage, but its implications were profound. Catherine, who had extensive knowledge of the royal jewelry collection and its protocols, immediately understood what Charlotte was referring to. Catherine's mind raced as she processed this information. She was aware of the diamond Jubilee brooch and its intended purpose, but she had assumed that during the chaos of funeral preparations, such details had simply been overlooked or that special arrangements had been made. The possibility that Queen Camilla had deliberately chosen to wear this particular piece, with its specific significance, created a diplomatic minefield that Catherine was completely unprepared to navigate during the Queen's funeral. The service continued with readings from Scripture and tributes from various religious leaders, but Catherine found herself unable to concentrate fully. She was acutely aware that they were being watched by millions of people around the world, and that every gesture, expression, and interaction was being scrutinized by media outlets and royal watchers. Any sign of family discord during such a solemn occasion would create a scandal that could overshadow the Queen's memory and damage the monarchy's reputation. Meanwhile, Charlotte continued to observe the proceedings with the sharp attention that had always characterized her personality. She noticed the way different family members interacted with each other, the careful positioning of various royals according to their rank and relationship to the Queen, and the subtle signs of tension that adults thought they were hiding. Her young mind was processing not just the immediate situation with the brooch, but the broader dynamics of power and respect within her family. As the service progressed toward its conclusion, Charlotte made another observation that would later prove significant. She noticed that several other pieces of the Queen's jewelry were being worn by different family members, each choice seeming carefully calculated to send particular messages about status, relationship, and future intentions. The funeral, she realized, was not just about saying goodbye to her great-grandmother, but also about establishing new hierarchies and allegiances within the family structure. The moment that would later be described by palace insiders as the incident occurred during the final hymn. As the congregation prepared for the committal portion of the service, Charlotte did something that no adult had anticipated. She stood up from her seat and, with the confidence that comes from absolute certainty about right and wrong, she pointed directly at Queen Camilla's brooch. Her voice, clear and carrying in the acoustics of the ancient abbey, asked a question that froze everyone in their immediate vicinity. "Why are you wearing my Gongon's brooch when she said it was for my mummy?" The words were spoken without malice or calculation, simply as a child seeking to understand why adults were not following the rules that had been clearly explained to her. The reaction was immediate and varied. Catherine's face flushed with embarrassment and concern. William's jaw tightened as he realized the implications of his daughter's public observation, and Queen Camilla's expression shifted from surprise to something that could only be described as fury. The world leaders and dignitaries seated nearby turned their heads to see what had caused this unexpected disruption, while television cameras captured every second of the unfolding drama. Palace officials, trained to handle almost any conceivable crisis, found themselves completely unprepared for a 7-year-old princess challenging the queen consort's jewelry choices during the most watched funeral in recent history. The incident lasted only seconds, but its impact would reverberate through the royal family for months to come. What Charlotte had done, in her innocent quest for fairness and justice, was to expose a calculated move by Queen Camilla to assert her position and authority within the family hierarchy. The choice to wear the diamond Jubilee brooch had been deliberate, designed to send a message about her status as queen consort and her right to the privileges that came with that position. However, Charlotte's intervention had turned what was meant to be a subtle power play into a public embarrassment that would require careful damage control. As palace security and protocol officers scrambled to manage the situation, Charlotte remained standing, waiting for an answer to her question with the patience and persistence that her parents knew all too well. She had no understanding of the storm she had just created, only a clear sense that something unfair had happened and that it needed to be addressed. Her great-grandmother had taught her to speak up for what was right, and that was exactly what she had done. The immediate aftermath of Charlotte's intervention would test every relationship within the royal family and force King Charles III to confront divisions he had hoped to avoid during his early reign. The little princess had unwittingly started a war that would challenge the very foundations of how the modern monarchy would operate going forward. The immediate aftermath of Princess Charlotte's public challenge created a ripple effect throughout Westminster Abbey that palace officials would later describe as one of the most challenging moments in modern royal protocol management. Within seconds of Charlotte's question, a carefully orchestrated response plan swung into action. But nothing could undo the fact that millions of viewers worldwide had witnessed a 7-year-old princess questioning the queen consort choice of jewelry during the most solemn moment in recent British history. Catherine's response was swift and diplomatic, a testament to years of training in royal crisis management. She gently placed her hand on Charlotte's shoulder and whispered something that caused the little princess to sit down, though her expression remained one of confused dissatisfaction. The words Catherine chose were carefully calculated to acknowledge Charlotte's concern while redirecting her attention back to the service. "We'll talk about this later, darling. Right now we need to focus on saying goodbye to Gongon." However, the damage had already been done. Queen Camilla's face had cycled through multiple emotions in the span of those few seconds, from shock to embarrassment to what observers later described as barely contained anger. Her hands had instinctively moved to touch the diamond Jubilee brooch, as if to protect it from further scrutiny, a gesture that was captured by multiple photographers and would later be analyzed frame by royal watchers around the world. Prince William's reaction revealed the depth of his protective instincts regarding both his daughter and his family's public image. His jaw clenched as he processed what had just occurred, and his eyes quickly scanned the nearby dignitaries to assess how much of the exchange had been witnessed. The presence of world leaders, foreign royalty, and hundreds of media representatives made this incident far more than a simple family disagreement. It was now a matter of international diplomatic significance. The funeral service continued according to protocol, but the atmosphere in the front rows had shifted dramatically. Palace officials, communicating through discreet hand signals, and carefully positioned personnel began implementing damage control measures even as the Archbishop of Canterbury delivered his final tributes to the late Queen. The immediate priority was to prevent any further disruptions while ensuring that the incident did not overshadow the dignity of the occasion. Behind the scenes, Palace communication staff were already fielding urgent calls from media outlets seeking clarification about what had transpired. Social media platforms exploded with speculation, analysis, and commentary about Princess Charlotte's intervention, with hashtags trending worldwide within minutes. The royal family's carefully managed public image was facing its most significant challenge since the days of Princess Diana's death, and this time the crisis centered around a child who had simply asked an honest question. King Charles III, who had been focused on delivering his own tribute to his mother, became aware of the situation through subtle signals from his private secretary. The new monarch faced his first major crisis as sovereign, one that threatened to divide his family publicly and undermine the unity he desperately needed to establish his reign. The irony was not lost on palace insiders that his first significant challenge as king involved a conflict between his wife and his 7-year-old granddaughter. As the funeral procession moved from Westminster Abbey to Windsor Castle for the committal service, the tension within the royal convoy was palpable. Charlotte, still confused about why her honest question had created such a reaction, continued to press her parents for explanations. Her persistent nature, normally considered a positive trait, was now creating additional stress in an already volatile situation. Catherine and William found themselves in the impossible position of trying to explain adult political dynamics to a child while managing their own anger and embarrassment. The car ride provided the first opportunity for Queen Camilla to address the situation directly, though protocol required that any communication go through King Charles rather than directly to the Wales family. Through a series of discreet phone calls between vehicles, it became clear that Camilla viewed Charlotte's intervention as a deliberate challenge orchestrated by William and Catherine, rather than the spontaneous action of a confused child. This interpretation would prove to be a critical factor in how the conflict developed over the following days. Queen Camilla's perspective on the incident was colored by years of navigating the complex relationships within the royal family, and her acute awareness of how tenuous her position remained despite her official status. She had worked tirelessly to gain acceptance and respect, particularly following her marriage to Charles in 2005. The public challenge to her authority, even from a child, felt like a direct threat to the legitimacy she had fought so hard to establish. The Diamond Jubilee brooch had been chosen deliberately by Camilla and her team of advisors as a way to symbolically assert her position as queen consort during one of the most watched royal events in decades. The brooch represented more than just beautiful jewelry. It was a statement about succession, legitimacy, and the new order that would define Charles's reign. Charlotte's intervention had effectively turned this symbol of authority into a source of controversy and embarrassment. Upon arrival at Windsor Castle for the committal service, the family faced the additional challenge of managing the situation in a more intimate setting with fewer people present. The smaller gathering included only close family members and personal friends of the Queen, which meant that any ongoing tension would be even more visible and potentially damaging to family relationships. Charlotte's confusion about the morning's events had not diminished, and her parents were running out of ways to redirect her attention without providing explanations they were not prepared to give. The committal service proceeded without further incident, but the undercurrents of conflict were evident to anyone familiar with royal body language and protocol. Queen Camilla maintained her dignity throughout the ceremony, but her positioning relative to other family members and her interaction patterns revealed the strain she was experiencing. Similarly, Catherine's behavior showed signs of stress as she balanced her roles as a mother, trying to comfort her children while managing her own feelings about the morning's events. Following the committal service, the family gathered for a private reception at Windsor Castle, which provided the first opportunity for direct conversations about the incident. However, rather than resolving the situation, these discussions served to deepen the divisions that Charlotte's question had exposed. Different family members had varying interpretations of what had occurred, and what it meant for the future of family dynamics. King Charles found himself mediating between his wife's sense of having been publicly humiliated and his son's fierce protection of his daughter's innocent intentions. The conversation was further complicated by the presence of other family members who had their own opinions about jewelry protocols, succession planning, and the appropriate role of young royals in public ceremonies. What had started as a child's question about fairness had evolved into a comprehensive examination of power structures within a monarchy. The palace's official response to media inquiries was carefully crafted to minimize the significance of the incident while protecting Princess Charlotte from criticism. Press statements emphasized the emotional nature of the day, the challenges of managing young children during such significant events, and the family's united grief over the Queen's passing. However, these public statements did little to address the private anger and resentment that was building within the family itself. Queen Camilla's private conversations with her closest advisors revealed the depth of her frustration with the situation. She felt that the incident had undermined her authority at a crucial moment, and worried about how it would affect her ability to establish herself as an effective queen consort. Her concerns were not entirely unfounded, as royal watchers and constitutional experts were already analyzing the implications of the jewelry choice and Charlotte's challenge to it. The following days saw a series of private meetings between various family members as they attempted to address the immediate crisis and prevent further damage to family relationships. However, these discussions often served to highlight fundamental disagreements about royal protocol, the education of young royals, and the balance between tradition and modernization that would define Charles's reign. Princess Charlotte, meanwhile, remained largely unaware of the storm she had created. Her parents chose to explain the situation in terms she could understand, emphasizing that sometimes adults make mistakes or have different opinions about how things should be done. However, Charlotte's keen intelligence meant that she continued to ask questions about why her great-grandmother's wishes were not being followed, and whether other family members were also not following the rules they had been taught. The incident had also created practical challenges for future royal events and the management of the royal jewelry collection. Palace officials found themselves reviewing protocols for jewelry selection, particularly for pieces with specific succession significance. The question of who had the authority to make decisions about these items and how such decisions should be communicated became a source of ongoing debate within royal household management. Media coverage of the incident varied widely, from sympathetic portrayals of Charlotte as an innocent child caught in adult politics to more critical analyses of whether the incident represented deeper fractures within the royal family. International media paid particular attention to the story, with many outlets drawing parallels to historical conflicts within the British monarchy and speculating about what the incident might reveal about the future stability of the institution. The long-term implications of Charlotte's intervention were becoming clear to palace insiders even as the immediate crisis management continued. The incident had exposed fundamental questions about authority, tradition, and change within the monarchy that would need to be addressed as King Charles established his reign. What had begun as a child's honest question had become a defining moment that would influence royal family dynamics for years to come. The week following the Queen's funeral was marked by a series of private family meetings that would later be described by palace insiders as some of the most intense discussions in modern royal history. The public had seen only the surface of what occurred at Westminster Abbey, but behind the closed doors of various royal residences, the incident involving Princess Charlotte and the Diamond Jubilee brooch had unleashed years of suppressed tensions and fundamental disagreements about the future direction of the monarchy. King Charles III found himself in an impossible position as he attempted to balance his roles as sovereign, husband, father, and grandfather. His first major crisis as monarch was deeply personal, involving the two women who were most important to establishing the stability of his reign, his wife Camilla and his daughter-in-law Catherine. The diplomatic skills he had developed over decades of public service were now being tested in ways he had never anticipated. The first formal family meeting took place at Clarence House 3 days after the funeral, with only the most senior family members present. King Charles, Queen Camilla, Prince William, and Catherine gather in the drawing room where Charles had conducted so many important discussions during his years as Prince of Wales. The atmosphere was tense from the moment they assembled, with careful attention paid to seating arrangements and the subtle signals that such positioning would send about alliances and authority. Queen Camilla opened the discussion by addressing what she perceived as a deliberate challenge to her authority and position within the family. Her voice, though controlled, carried undertones of anger and hurt as she described the embarrassment she had experienced during one of the most important days of her life as queen consort. She had spent years earning her place within the royal family, and Charlotte's public question had, in her view, undermined that hard-won respect in front of the entire world. Camilla's interpretation of events went beyond Charlotte's simple question about jewelry. She saw the incident as evidence of a broader resistance to her authority within the family, possibly orchestrated by William and Catherine to embarrass her during a crucial moment. This perspective revealed deep-seated insecurities about her position and ongoing concerns about how she was perceived by both the family and the public. Her emotional investment in the diamond Jubilee brooch choice became clearer as she explained her reasoning for wearing it. The selection of the brooch had been deliberate and symbolic, chosen specifically to assert her position as queen consort and to signal her intention to fully embrace the privileges and responsibilities that came with her new role. She had consulted with her private secretary and trusted advisors about jewelry choices for the funeral, and the diamond Jubilee brooch had been selected precisely because of its significance within the royal collection. In Camilla's view, her right to wear it was unquestionable, and Charlotte's challenge represented an inappropriate interference in adult royal business. Prince William's response revealed the depth of his protective instincts regarding both his daughter and his family's approach to royal protocol. He spoke passionately about Charlotte's innocence and her genuine confusion about what she had witnessed, emphasizing that a 7-year-old child could not be held responsible for adult political dynamics. His defense of Charlotte was fierce and uncompromising, making it clear that he would not tolerate any criticism of his daughter's actions or character. However, William's comments also revealed his own concerns about how royal traditions and protocols were being interpreted and implemented. He had grown up with a deep understanding of the significance of royal jewelry and its connection to succession and legitimacy. The Queen's specific instructions about certain pieces, including her conversations with Charlotte, were not matters that could be easily dismissed or reinterpreted for political convenience. His defense of his daughter was also a defense of his late grandmother's wishes and the importance of honoring her explicit instructions. Catherine's position in the discussion was particularly complex, as she found herself directly affected by the controversy while also being responsible for managing Charlotte's understanding of the situation. Her knowledge of royal jewelry protocols was extensive, gained through years of careful study and preparation for her role as future queen. She was fully aware of the diamond Jubilee brooch's intended purpose and the significance of Camilla choosing to wear it, but she also understood the political implications of challenging such decisions publicly. Catherine's approach to the discussion was measured and diplomatic, focusing on the need to protect Charlotte from adult conflicts while also addressing the underlying issues that had created the situation. She proposed establishing clearer guidelines for jewelry selection and ensuring that all family members understood the protocols surrounding pieces with specific succession significance. Her suggestions were practical and forward-looking, aimed at preventing similar incidents in the future while maintaining family harmony. The conversation revealed fundamental differences in how various family members viewed royal tradition, protocol flexibility, and the role of younger family members in understanding and maintaining institutional standards. King Charles found himself moderating between strongly held positions that reflected deeper philosophical differences about how the monarchy should evolve under his reign. Queen Camilla's supporters within the palace hierarchy argued that the monarchy needed to modernize its approach to protocol and tradition, allowing for more flexibility in how royal jewelry and symbols were used. They contended that strict adherence to historical precedents would limit the monarchy's ability to adapt to changing times, and that Camilla's choices should be respected as legitimate expressions of her position as queen consort. Conversely, William and Catherine's perspective emphasized the importance of maintaining clear connections to historical precedent and honoring the specific wishes of previous monarchs. They argued that the monarchy's strength came from its continuity and that changing established protocols without careful consideration could undermine the institution's credibility and legitimacy. The discussions continued over several days, with various family members and advisors contributing different perspectives on how the situation should be resolved. Princess, and known for her direct approach to family conflicts, supported the importance of maintaining clear protocols while also acknowledging that Camilla's position as queen consort gave her certain privileges that needed to be respected. Her intervention helped establish a framework for compromise that both sides could potentially accept. Meanwhile, Princess Charlotte remained largely unaware of the extensive discussions her question had prompted. Her parents had chosen to shield her from the adult politics involved while continuing to reinforce her understanding of fairness, respect, and the importance of speaking up when something seemed wrong. Charlotte's natural curiosity meant that she continued to ask questions about royal traditions and protocols, but her parents were now much more careful about how they explained such matters. The incident had also created practical challenges for palace staff responsible for managing the royal jewelry collection and coordinating family appearances at public events. New protocols were being developed to ensure clear communication about jewelry selections and to prevent future conflicts over pieces with particular significance. These changes represented a significant shift in how royal household management approached such details. International media coverage of the incident had evolved from initial reports about a minor disruption at the funeral to more detailed analyses of what the conflict revealed about the royal family's internal dynamics. Constitutional experts and royal historians offered varying interpretations of the significance of jewelry protocols and the implications of public challenges to royal authority, even from young family members. The resolution of the immediate crisis required compromises from all parties involved, but the underlying tensions exposed by Charlotte's innocent question would continue to influence family relationships for months to come. King Charles's handling of the situation would be seen as an early test of his leadership style and his ability to maintain family unity while respecting both tradition and the need for evolution within the monarchy. Queen Camilla's agreement to participate in establishing clearer jewelry protocols represented a significant concession, though she maintained that her original choice had been appropriate given her position. Her willingness to engage in discussions about future guidelines helped demonstrate her commitment to family harmony, even as she continued to assert her rights as queen consort. The private family meetings concluded with agreements about communication protocols, jewelry selection guidelines, and approaches to educating young royals about their responsibilities and privileges. However, the emotional impact of the conflict on various family relationships would prove more difficult to resolve than the practical protocols that emerged from their discussions. Princess Charlotte's role in prompting these important discussions about tradition, authority, and family dynamics would later be viewed as unexpectedly significant, though she remained unaware of the broader implications of her honest question. Her natural sense of fairness and justice had forced the adult members of her family to confront issues they might otherwise have avoided, ultimately strengthening the monarchy's foundation through open dialogue and clarified expectations. The incident marked a turning point in how the royal family approached internal conflicts and protocol questions, establishing new standards for transparency and communication that would influence their operations for years to come. What had begun as a child's simple question about jewelry had evolved into a comprehensive examination of royal values and priorities that would help define King Charles III's reign. 3 months after the funeral incident, the royal family had settled into new patterns of interaction that reflected the lessons learned from Princess Charlotte's unexpected intervention. The crisis that had begun with a child's innocent question about jewelry had forced fundamental changes in how the monarchy approached internal conflicts, protocol decisions, and the education of younger family members about their roles and responsibilities. The formal resolution of the Diamond Jubilee brooch controversy came through a carefully orchestrated process that allowed all parties to maintain their dignity while establishing clearer guidelines for the future. King Charles, demonstrating the diplomatic skills that would define his early reign, proposed a solution that honored both Queen Camilla's position as queen consort and the traditional protocols surrounding significant pieces in the royal collection. The Diamond Jubilee brooch was officially designated as part of a rotating collection that would be worn by appropriate family members at significant state occasions, with priority given to the spouse of the heir apparent for events of particular historical importance. This arrangement allowed Camilla to maintain her claim to having worn the piece appropriately, while ensuring that Catherine would have access to it for future occasions that required such symbolic significance. More importantly, the resolution process established new communication protocols within the royal family that would prevent similar misunderstandings in the future. A formal committee was created to oversee decisions about jewelry selection for major events, with representation from different branches of the family and clear guidelines about consultation requirements. This institutional approach to managing royal symbols reflected a more modern and collaborative approach to monarchy management. Princess Charlotte's role in prompting these changes was acknowledged privately within the family, though her parents continued to shield her from understanding the full political implications of her actions. Catherine and William chose to frame the situation as an example of how speaking up about fairness and following rules was important, reinforcing Charlotte's natural instincts while helping her understand the complexity of adult decision-making processes. The incident had revealed Charlotte's remarkable understanding of royal protocol for someone her age, as well as her strong sense of justice and fairness. These qualities, which had created a crisis in the short term, were increasingly viewed by family members as positive attributes that could serve the monarchy well in the future. Her willingness to speak up about perceived wrongdoing, even in difficult circumstances, demonstrated the kind of courage and integrity that would be valuable as she grew into her role within the royal family. Queen Camilla's handling of the aftermath showed considerable growth in her approach to family dynamics and her understanding of the delicate balance required to maintain relationships within the monarchy. Her initial anger and sense of betrayal gradually gave way to a recognition that Charlotte's actions had been motivated by love and respect for her great-grandmother rather than any desire to undermine authority. This realization helped Camilla develop a more positive relationship with William's children over the following months. The private conversations between Camilla and Catherine that took place several weeks after the funeral were described by palace insiders as crucial to healing the rift that had developed between them. These discussions allowed both women to express their perspectives honestly while finding common ground in their shared commitment to supporting the monarchy and protecting the interests of the family. Camilla's acknowledgement that the jewelry selection process had been handled poorly helped Catherine understand that the incident had not been intended as a personal slight. Catherine's role in managing the crisis demonstrated her growing confidence and skill as a senior member of the royal family. Her ability to protect Charlotte while also working toward a diplomatic resolution showed the kind of leadership that would be essential as she prepared for her future role as queen. The incident also strengthened her relationship with King Charles, who came to appreciate her measured approach to family conflicts and her commitment to institutional stability. Prince William's fierce defense of his daughter during the crisis revealed the depth of his commitment to protecting his children from the political pressures of royal life, while also ensuring they understood their responsibilities. His approach to parenting within the royal context became a model for balancing traditional expectations with modern child development principles. The incident reinforced his determination to give his children as normal a childhood as possible while preparing them for their future roles. The broader implications of the incident extended beyond the immediate family to influence how the monarchy approached public engagement and crisis management. Palace communications teams developed new strategies for handling situations involving young royals, recognizing that children's spontaneous actions could create both challenges and opportunities for demonstrating the human side of the royal family. Media coverage of the incident evolution from initial shock and speculation to more nuanced analyses of family dynamics and institutional change. Many commentators praised Princess Charlotte's honesty and the royal family's ability to handle internal conflicts in a way that ultimately strengthened their bonds and improved their operational procedures. The incident became a case study in how traditional institutions could adapt and evolve while maintaining their core values and purposes. The long-term impact on Princess Charlotte herself was largely positive, as her parents worked carefully to ensure she understood that speaking up for what seemed right was valuable, while also learning about the complexity of adult relationships and decision-making. The incident became part of her education about royal responsibility and the importance of considering how actions might affect others, even when motivated by the best intentions. King Charles's handling of the crisis established important precedents for his reign, demonstrating his ability to mediate family conflicts while maintaining institutional stability. His willingness to engage with difficult conversations and implement systematic changes showed a leadership style that combined respect for tradition with openness to evolution and improvement. The resolution of the incident became an early example of how his monarchy would approach challenges and opportunities. The new jewelry protocols that emerged from the crisis were implemented gradually over the following months, with careful attention to ensuring that all family members understood the reasoning behind changes. These protocols served as a model for addressing other areas where traditional practices needed clarification or modernization, leading to a comprehensive review of royal procedures and expectations. 6 months after the funeral, the royal family appeared at the Christmas Day service at Sandringham, their first major public appearance together since the incident. The careful coordination of their attire, including jewelry selections that demonstrated the new protocols in action, showed how the crisis had ultimately led to improved planning and communication. Princess Charlotte, now 8 years old and even more confident in her understanding of royal traditions, walked with poise and dignity that impressed observers and demonstrated her continued growth and development. The incident had also influenced how other royal families around the world approached similar protocol questions and family conflicts. Constitutional monarchies in Europe and elsewhere studied the British royal family's handling of the situation as an example of how traditional institutions could address internal tensions while maintaining public confidence and institutional integrity. Educational institutions that studied monarchy and constitutional government incorporated the incident into their curricula as an example of how informal family dynamics could influence formal institutional operations. The case became a valuable teaching tool for understanding the human elements that shape even the most traditional and protocol-driven organizations. Looking back on the incident a year later, palace insiders characterized it as a turning point that had ultimately strengthened the royal family's ability to function effectively under King Charles's leadership. Princess Charlotte's innocent question about fairness had forced important conversations and changes that might otherwise have been delayed or avoided entirely. Her 7-year-old perspective had provided clarity and direction that helped resolve issues that had been simmering beneath the surface of royal family relationships. The lasting legacy of the Diamond Jubilee brooch incident was not the temporary embarrassment or family tension it had created, but rather the positive changes it had prompted in how the monarchy operated and how family members related to each other. Princess Charlotte had unknowingly performed a valuable service for her family and the institution they represented, demonstrating that sometimes the most important truths come from the most unexpected sources. As Princess Charlotte continued to grow and develop her understanding of her role within the royal family, the incident became part of her personal history that illustrated the importance of speaking up for what seemed right, while also learning to navigate complex social and political dynamics. Her parents continued to use the experience as a teaching tool, helping her understand how individual actions could have broader implications while reinforcing the values of honesty, fairness, and respect that would guide her throughout her life. The royal family's ability to transform a moment of crisis into an opportunity for growth and improvement became a defining characteristic of King Charles's early reign, setting a tone of openness to change and commitment to continuous improvement that would influence how the monarchy approached challenges for years to come. Princess Charlotte's question about a brooch had ultimately helped create a stronger, more unified, and more effective royal family that was better prepared to serve the British people and the Commonwealth in the 21st century.